I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. She tried to deny it at first, but when I yelled at her, she was forced to start talking. She burst into tears and went on her knees. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Joe. Forgive me, please. It wasn't intentional. Of course, I was touched by her tears. I couldn't bear to see her crying, but I also needed to know who she cheated on me with and why she did it. When I asked her, she only cried more, her body trembling uncontrollably. Tell me, who is it? It's your brother. It felt like my world stopped for a moment. I couldn't believe my ears. How could Bob be responsible for my wife's pregnancy? I grew up with a selfish brother, a brother who never praised me, but never failed to criticize every little mistake I made, and even took advantage of them. My name is Joe, and I have an elder brother, Bob. Bob was born just 2 years before me, but he boasted about and took advantage of the age gap like it was his life's goal to do so. We went to the same school, and I hated every bit of it. I didn't like the fact that I had to swallow Bob's stupid behaviors at school. He would often come to me with his friends, strangling me and pushing me to the floor roughly in pretense of being playful with me. Bob was just too rough. I couldn't say if he was intentionally extra with me, but I never enjoyed it. Once, I was eating in the school's cafeteria, and he suddenly walked up to me and kicked the table, making my glass of milk fall and pour on the table and my thighs. I was so angry, but I couldn't fight him. We were at school, and it would be embarrassing to fight with my elder brother there, so I kept mute and simply left the cafeteria, ignoring his loud, mocking laughter. When we got home and I confronted him, he blew up. Are you crazy? You're so ungrateful. I'm 2 years older than you, yet I play around with you like we're age mates, and all you do is complain. You're so immature. I was so annoyed because he blew everything out of proportion. I simply wanted him to reduce how rough he was with me, but he was taking it differently. When I tried to explain, he slapped me. I was shocked. The next time you're disrespectful to me, it will be more than a slap. You're so foolish and ungrateful. When my parents returned, I reported the case to them. But when Bob was summoned, he began crying. I just wanted to be nice to him. No one talks to him at school. I and my friends play with him so he's not left out. How's that bad? Even though we're older than him, we don't mind playing around with him. How does that make us bad? I couldn't believe my ears. I had friends at school. In fact, most of my friends stopped being close to me because they were afraid of getting beaten up by my brother and his friends. Now, how could I explain that my brother was lying when they were already hugging and petting him? Joe, apologize to your brother, love. Don't be so mad at him. He's just looking out for you, son. I used to be rough like that with my brothers too. It's just how boys joke around. Don't be mad at your brother, okay? Did I have any choice? No. I couldn't be seen as a weakling before my parents. I forced myself to take his silly jokes until I finally graduated high school. I'd grown up to be very handsome and manly, but Bob was 2 times better. He got a girlfriend the first year he resumed college. At the time, I was still at home. Whenever my parents were out to work, Bob would bring in different girls to our house. I would try to advise him against doing that, but he never listened. How dare you tell me what to do? I'm 2 years older than you. You have no right to dictate how I live my life to me. I learned to shut up quickly. One day, a girl came visiting. All 3 of us were in the living room watching TV. I didn't say a word or do anything except watch the TV. Shockingly, we heard the sound of my mom's car, and we all froze. My parents had gone out in my mom's car, and they'd returned. As if planned, Bob quickly got off the couch with the girl, and they rushed to me. He pushed her on me and stood in front of us, speaking to me like I'd committed an offense. When my parents came in to meet the scene, I saw how their faces fell. They seemed to misunderstand what was happening, just as Bob wanted. You're bringing girls home now, Joe. I'm so disappointed in you. At that moment, seeing my mom's face crushed me. She was even more disappointed. I feel so embarrassed. Mom, Bob's lying. I didn't bring her home. I don't even know her. I swear to you, Mom. Believe me, please. Are you calling me a liar? You both were sleeping on the couch, and I told you to get dressed properly. What have I done wrong this time? After my mom left, I felt so bad. I quickly stood up and ran to my room, where I didn't hesitate to cry as much as possible. Later on, I explained to my parents, and they realized that Bob had lied. However, I begged them not to talk about it to him, and they didn't. In his third year of college, Bob began exhibiting even worse behaviors. He stopped returning home daily and only came on Saturdays. When my parents asked him, he lied that he was living with his friends. It was good for me because I didn't have to face his silly behaviors anymore. Soon, he added more. He would smoke at home whenever my parents were out and call me a weakling whenever I refused to join him. Once, our parents caught him smoking and drinking in the living room. I'd expected them to lash out at him or something, but they didn't. They only asked him to be careful and eat healthy food. I was quite surprised, but I let it slide. He was old enough. Years later, we were finally grown men, and I was married. My brother had gotten nearly completely out of control. He dropped out of college in his last year and left home to wherever. He suddenly came to my house one day. According to him, he was ready to turn a new leaf. I was impressed by how different he sounded, so I offered to help him. One time, about 2 weeks later, I had a fight with Bob. He'd come to visit me, yet he was trying to be all bossy, and that was annoying me. I tried to calmly ask him to stop, but he got mad. What? Are you telling me how to behave? I'm 2 years older than you, so I can do whatever I want. There he went with the age gap thing again. I couldn't take it anymore. Until when are you going to keep mentioning this? You're 2 years older than me. Yes. Now act like it. We kept going back and forth until Bob left my house in pure anger. When my wife returned home from work, we also got into a small fight. I went to bed that night with a hurt heart. After that one night, when my wife didn't spend the night with me due to our fight, things took a strangely different turn. Even after we settled our issue, she would return home very late in the night, far beyond her usual time. My brother and I hadn't settled our fight, but he would often come over to my house, have little conversations with me while giving me silly smirks. About 3 months later, my wife suddenly announced her pregnancy. I frowned. How was she pregnant when we hadn't had sex in 3 months? I tried to push it aside, but it kept bothering me. I faked happiness when she gave me the news, but I knew the pregnancy wasn't mine. She had cheated on me. I managed to hold it in until her 6th month of being pregnant. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. She tried to deny it at first, but when I yelled at her, she was forced to start talking. She burst into tears and went on her knees. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Joe. Forgive me, please. It wasn't intentional. Of course, I was touched by her tears. I couldn't bear to see her crying, but I also needed to know who she cheated on me with and why she did it. When I asked her, she only cried more, her body trembling uncontrollably. Tell me, who is it? It's your brother. It felt like my world stopped for a moment. I couldn't believe my ears. How could Bob be responsible for my wife's pregnancy? It's not possible. You're joking with me. I'm not, Joe. He's responsible for this. She further explained that she had run into Bob that night we fought. They'd gone to his house together, and things progressed from there. And it wasn't just that day. They were dating. My brother had impregnated my wife and was also dating her. I broke into a sob. I was heartbroken. I wanted nothing more than for all of that to be a nightmare. I wanted to wake up, but I couldn't because it was all real. I cried until my eyes and throat began to hurt. I cried until my eyes refused to form tears anymore, I'd never felt so hurt. I sent my wife out. I felt disgusted just staring at her. Once she left, I rushed over to my parents and broke down again in front of them. When they heard about what happened, they were shocked. They hadn't seen Bob since he left home and were devastated to hear what he did when I was only trying to help him. It hurt so badly because Bob and my wife weren't strangers to each other. I was even more sad to think that my wife could probably be with Bob as we spoke. After crying over it for days, I decided to divorce her. Bob showed up with her at my parents' house, and they both told us they weren't going to stop dating. In anger, my parents cussed at my wife and disowned Bob. They both didn't seem to care and left us. My wife signed the divorce papers without even thinking twice, and I was left alone with nothing but my parents and my shattered heart. I didn't hear from them until about 6 years later, after my parents had died. Both my parents had left behind a good inheritance for me, which promised wealth for generations. I had also found a new lady I was talking to. She comforted me in every way possible and guided me whenever I needed guidance. One day, we were both going out when I suddenly saw Bob and my ex-wife standing outside my gate. I stopped my car and stepped out. They immediately rushed to me and went on their knees. "Help us, Joe. Please forgive us and help." Apparently, both Bob and my ex-wife had been diagnosed with cancer. Bob lost his job a month ago, while my ex-wife had stopped working 6 months earlier after the doctor warned her against doing anything stressful. They were both living from hand to mouth and couldn't afford their surgeries. They were begging for my help. I burst into laughter. "After what you both did to me, I'm very surprised to see you in this condition." "Joe, please," they pleaded. "We're going to die if you don't help us. Please, our son was born paralyzed. No one is going to help him if we don't. Please, Joe." Karma had truly dealt with them. I smiled happily. "I have no help to render to you both. Not now. Not ever. You both didn't care about my feelings when you hurt me, so I don't care about your paralyzed child. When you die, I'll make sure to attend your funerals, though dressed in red. Oh, that's if anyone would be kind enough to give you both proper burials." I walked back to my car, ignoring their cries and pleas. They deserved it and more. Not in a million years would I help them. Never. 6 months later, I heard rumors that Bob had died and was buried, while his wife was in critical condition at the hospital. As for their paralyzed child, he was given up for adoption since their illness had become so serious. As for me, well, I later got married to Jennifer, and she is pregnant. I'm so happy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below.